Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do. In this episode, I interview Ed Walters, Chief Strategy Officer at VLEX and co-founder of Fastcase, whose journey from ambitious student to building one of legal tech's most successful companies demonstrates how persistence, mission-driven focus, and strategic partnerships can democratize access to justice for millions. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host. I'm thrilled today to have on Ed Walters, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at VLEX. He is the co-founder and former CEO of Fastcase. He is also an adjunct professor, not just at one, not just two, but three different law schools, including University of Chicago, Cornell, and Georgetown, and spreads his wisdom and expertise that way. And Ed, just want to say hello and introduce you to everyone. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for inviting me to join you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I actually heard some others that there's a bit of a heat wave. You're in DC right now, right?
Yeah, it's about 100 degrees right now.
Oh, and I know DC gets a little humid, right?
Yeah, it's about 150% humidity. So, I grew up in Louisiana, so I don't mind it. I'm kind of used to it. But everyone around me is wilting. So,
yeah, I think Louisiana is good training ground for the.
Yes, it prepared me well.
So we were just chatting a little bit before we got started, and you had mentioned, that you were coming back from New York City. I'm sure you do a lot of travel in your capacity as Chief Strategy Officer at VLEX. How did that go? What was that about?
Oh, man. So one of the most interesting parts of the merger between Fastcase and VLEX is that there's kind of offices everywhere. We have offices in, I think, 12 time zones. And so the travel is different. We have usually one of our board meetings per year in Barcelona, one in Miami, one in London usually. The fourth one of the year we spread around. And so the travel's been great. I'm going to Europe a couple of more times per year than I'm used to. And, I still maintain my travel in the US. I go to New York and Miami and Chicago quite a lot. I haven't been out to the West Coast as much as I used to, but I'm going to get out there a little bit more this year as well. So it's, it's been really interesting. I used to travel quite a lot anyway with teaching and conferences and stuff. But I'll say that I just think that the international travel is an interesting departure. It's not that it's better; it's just different than what we were doing before, just at Fastcase.
That's sweet. I know from dabbling a little bit, maybe not as much as you, but in international travel, that you feel much more connected to the world at large, and hearing, everyone's thoughts about how things are affecting them, which, strangely enough, is not that different from how it's affecting us.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it builds empathy in an interesting way. Also, just living in Washington, D.C., there is a kind of a myopia about what's important. And sometimes it's hard to see the impacts of the things that we do everywhere else in the world. And so traveling, I think, builds empathy, which is really useful.
Traveling builds empathy. I like that. That could be a whole book.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Chief Strategy Officer, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it means a lot of things in a lot of different companies. At VLEX, if I'm doing this right, I'm really trying to align our team. We have a lot of different markets that we're in, a lot of different products. There's a very large initiative right now behind Vincent AI and building AI solutions. And so it's hard to keep that team kind of aligned. And sometimes it means, we're going to stop doing something, or someone who wants resources isn't going to get them. And so I think it's if I'm doing the job right, I'm just trying to help our team understand why we're doing what we're doing, and make sure everyone understands why their work is aligned to that goal and why it's important, and to understand where it fits in. I mean, the other part of it that I really like is in travel and speaking at conferences and teaching and working a lot with people who are subscribing to these tools. I just talk to a lot of people who are having all kinds of different experiences. The experience of a law student with AI is totally different from the traveling band of entrepreneurs who are doing AI work, which is totally different from people in global corporate legal departments and law firms who are building with these tools and trying to figure out how to make money with them and make their firm more competitive. And so I really like being able to have a lot of these conversations, hopefully, sort of bring them back and share them with our team and, inform the products in a way with those experiences. I'll tell you, I think you know this. The insight of law students is really interesting. I mean, you're teaching at Suffolk now, right?
Yeah, this past semester. But I know you have 10 years of experience, so like you probably learned a lot more than I have at this
No,
point.
I think you. I think I just started teaching classes on AI in addition to my kind of historic law of robots teaching. But I think you and I probably see this in the same way. Like the insights of law students are amazing and totally different. Like it's not an experience that you would get talking to corporate legal departments or entrepreneurs at conferences or you know people who are working in law firms. Law students have these really interesting insights, and I've always said if you want to learn something really well, try teaching. So maybe you have a common experience here, but it is such an amazing education for me to read about and discuss and think deeply about this AI frontier with law students. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I found it so fulfilling because, like you said, you really need to know your stuff. So even though, I've been working in the world, like having to go over it and dive even deeper into it. And the thing, like the thing that's fulfilling about working with the students, part of it is that kind of beginner's eyes that they bring to it, but also just their enthusiasm. I mean, they're usually in their early 20s and they see the world differently. They have that optimism and enthusiasm about things, and it is somewhat infectious, and I really enjoy that part too.
I think you'll see this too. It's also a wellspring, like it's fresh every year. So it's a replenishing supply of interest and enthusiasm and intelligence that is renewing every year. It inspires me so much. I love working with law students.
Well, I'm looking forward to teaching again in the spring, but so that's great. And I'm sure that you also find that it's a way of all of that, but also like contributing to the business in a way too, because it gives you insights that you may not have otherwise been exposed to that you can bring back to Fastcase, to VLEX, and then make even make things sharper and better.
Oh, totally, absolutely. The law students have things to teach in every class. Every year that I've taught AI, or every semester, I guess, since it's only been a couple, I've gone back to my team and said, "Oh, I can't wait to tell you about what happened in class today. I can't wait to tell you this insight that someone had about one of our products or the way things should work. So many good ideas. It's awesome."
And one thing I think about that is that I think a lot of these different silos that people have had in mind in kind of before times, like before COVID, before AI times, that those silos are really breaking down, and actually the ability to think across them strategically and interrelate and connecting the dots is the new way. And that new way forward is something that you know I could see with what you've done in your career, that you have your your fingers in a number of different, let's say, pies.
Well, I
And
think you see this in the same way, Tom. I mean, like it's interesting when you are teaching in law school, the experience that you have working in legal tech gives you like an entirely different background than people who have been teaching in law school for 20 years, right? I mean, they have a really interesting, rich experience that makes them fantastic law professors, right? But your work in, in LawDroid, your work as a lawyer, your work, in my case, like Fast Case and at VLEX, really informs that. It's a point of view you don't really get in the academy all the time. And then, your perspective as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, someone who has built a business is different as well too. And so each of those things informs the other in these fascinating ways you couldn't have anticipated, right? So each of them is useful to the others. But being having the benefit of teaching law students and learning alongside them and with them and from them really informs the legal AI work, and that informs the teaching and the business and everything else. So it's a great opportunity. I mean, I just really feel lucky to be doing all these things right now. It's a propitious time.
certainly is. And actually, that's the perfect segue to talk about your experience and coming to it from different places. Because let's go back. Well, as the audience knows, I love to go back to your origin story and get back to your roots. You had mentioned earlier that you grew up in Louisiana. Where was that? Where in Louisiana?
In Baton Rouge, yeah. And I grew up in a lawyer's house. My dad is a first generation lawyer, first generation college student, and he's actually just was sworn in as the president of the Louisiana State Bar Association. I'm very proud of him for that.
Wow.
But I grew up in a lawyer's house. My dad is like he wouldn't say about himself, but I can say he's probably the best litigator in the state of Louisiana. He teaches the kind of clinical practice class at LSU Law School. If you show up in court with my dad, you have already lost. Like he works a case so that there's just, there's no daylight between the case he has to prove and the facts that he has to introduce as evidence. So a lot of his cases settle because lawyers are smart. But if you ever have the bad fortune to appear in court with him, you have lost that case. And so I got to, really learn in this fantastic incubator experience what it means to be a lawyer. And my dad is like, also just one of the most honest, ethical people you'll meet. And so that was really influential as I was growing up as a kid. I would tag along and listen to his arguments sometimes and learn about his work. And so it really, sort of pointed me in that direction aspirationally when I was a kid.
Did you come from a big family? Did you have a lot of brothers and sisters?
I have one brother. It's a relatively small family. And like I said, my father is the first person on either side of my family of any generation to go to college. I mean, he's a real success story, and I'd love to have like kind of a front row seat to it. When I was a kid, our family was really, really poor. My dad was in the Air Force during Vietnam, stationed here in the States. And when he got out of the service, I was 4 years old. My brother was 2. We had just no money at all. And my father had just finished college before starting in the Air Force. And so he went to law school. But when he went to law school, I mean, there was no money anywhere, right? I mean, we didn't have money to live on. We were living in like kind of at Louisiana State University, there's like married students housing, which is like a dorm for people with families. And I mean, like I still remember, kind of waking up hungry, like not having, clothes, like getting hand-me-down clothes from friends and from the community, and my church, contributed to my education. And, ultimately he graduated from law school, started a law firm, and built like a very successful law practice. So by the time I was, going to high school, um, I wasn't waking up hungry anymore. But when I was a kid, like we were not well off at all. And so, I was old enough to remember what it was like when my father was getting started, when he was building that practice, and then seeing him work very hard and succeed and really build a successful law practice. Super inspiring.
It is a different thing going through law school with a family.
Did you do it?
I didn't, but I can only imagine because I had friends that did, and I do remember how burdensome law school was just for me, and
Yeah.
so I could just only imagine that, having to do that with a family and the responsibility of that, and also like it's quite a motivation as well. um,
Yeah.
that's an amazing story. Um, and how about your mom? What kind of influence did you get from her?
Oh man, my mom is like the kind of ultimate high standards motivator. So she always, really pushed me to do my best, not like to be the best, but to do my best. Sometimes I had trouble separating those things out as a kid. But, my mom was the one who was working when my dad was in law school. When we were hungry, she got chickens. So we'd have eggs for breakfast every morning. She planted a garden in the backyard that we all had responsibilities to tend and harvest. So yeah, my mom to this day is like a huge factor in my dad's success. He was kind of an introvert when he started practice, and she is very extroverted, and so she made sure that he got out there and did the things that he needed to be successful. They're a very potent combination.
Well, I actually had the pleasure of meeting them both in New Orleans. I forget what the event was
It
that
was
we.
ABA mid-year,
Oh,
I
okay.
think, right after COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were at the Louisiana Supreme Court, right?
Yep.
That was quite an event.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and getting to meet them was a rare treat. I don't think I've met many other like within our circles parents. So that was real nice. Um, and a wonderful story of their influence on you. I could see how you know uh, the way you described like working at home to kind of keep things going with the chickens and with growing stuff. It's teamwork, right? It's just
Yeah.
it's instilling teamwork and stick to itness and grit um, from doing that. So okay, so it sounds like there's two camps from people I talk to, especially since most all of us are lawyers and went to law school. There's the camp of those that they had it in their heads they want to be a lawyer from a younger age versus those that are like I needed to make money somehow, right?
Right.
But you sound like the former. From your dad's influence, you probably did you like from a younger age want to become a lawyer yourself, or did that come later?
Well, I definitely wanted to go to law school. I think in my younger life, I wanted to work in government. And had the opportunity a couple of times, once in state government in Louisiana, and once in the federal government, to do some government service. And for me, law school was the ultimate education on how government can and should work. And I got to actually work law clerk after law school for a little while too, and so it was cool to be able to do government service for a little while. But I think at some point I realized, like, I don't know, politics became pretty toxic in the 1990s, and by the time I was finished law school and working in a law firm in Washington D.C., it had also gotten pretty dangerous.
Huh.
I remember I was thinking pretty seriously about running for Attorney General of Virginia when a member of Congress was threatened A talk show host said, if you don't like the way he voted on this, here's his home address. Go tell him.
Oh,
Somebody
wow.
went to his house and cut his gas line, except it wasn't his house. It was his brother's house. And his brother had young kids who came home from school. And instead of coming in the house and turning on the lights the way they normally did, would have blown their house up, they smelled natural gas and went to their neighbor's house and said, something's wrong. And so, the fire department came out and made sure that the house didn't get blown up. But at the time, my son was pretty young, and I just remember thinking, like, this is no longer something that I really aspire to for my family. I think law and technology were independently passions of mine. And even in law school, I'd sort of had the idea that I wanted to start a legal technology company, even though there wasn't even such a thing. Like, this was probably 1996. I remember talking to friends in law school classes saying, what I'd really like to do is start, kind of software companies that help make the lives of lawyers better. And they looked at me like I was crazy, like that those didn't really even exist in
Right.
1995, 96, right? We barely had the World Wide Web at that point.
Yeah, barely web pages, Netscape, and you're already,
Mosaic.
yeah. Wow. Okay, a lot to unpack there. We kind of jumped ahead a little bit because at Georgetown, you got a degree in government and philosophy, right?
Yeah. Wow. Yes, I did.
And so one reason that intrigues me is I'm a philosophy major. I think that has like a lot of impact right now with a lot of different people that I've talked to, just about thinking differently and seeing relationships between things, and the way that kind of trains your mind a little bit. And then the government, that makes sense. Georgetown, DC, you're in DC now,
Yeah.
and then the motivation to wanting to get into politics was was there anyone there? Like, was there someone who you felt gave you a direction towards law school, or in any other way that you remember?
Someone in college who pointed me towards law school.
Yeah, somebody that just was a good influence on you in college. Maybe not, but I'm just curious if there was.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had this great boss um, in the summer between my junior and senior year of college.
Mm.
I got this internship at the White House. Um, it was kind of a fluky thing, and kind of a long story. You should tell me if you have the patience for it. But my first boss in the White House was a very inspiring woman named Maria Idol, and Maria was like ran the Office of Media Affairs, and she was like, the ultimate Washington ideal for meritocracy. She didn't care about partisanship. She wanted what was sort of um, best for the work. She had super skills, very low ego, like exactly what you want, but also like incredibly smart and savvy, very politic. She had great political instincts. Um, and she was just a really, really good mentor to me. Uh, I think she also had just sort of impeccable morals. Like, she always knew what the right thing to do was, and without fail, did that thing. And
Mm.
so it was really cool to see. It was Maria who hired me that summer when I said, hey, look, I should tell you, this was the White House of George Herbert Walker Bush. And I said, like, look, I'm a Democrat. I should just tell you right up front in this interview, I'm not a Republican. In fact, I'm a Democrat. And she said, look, kid, you're applying here to be like an intern, right? You're going to be taking out the trash, not making foreign policy or something. Like, it doesn't care. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a socialist. Like, you're going to be faxing things.
Right.
So that internship ended up being like a much longer engagement and ended up being a political appointment to the Office of Presidential Speechwriting. Over time, it began to matter quite a bit what my politics were. And there are some really funny stories from my time in government where me at 20, unburdened by humility, would take on causes inside government where I thought it made sense, but probably didn't make sense.
I'm really glad that you brought it up because it's definitely something I wanted to talk to you about, the speech writing. Because I saw that and I was like, wow, that there must be some stories there. So pick one. Like, is there one that you'd feel comfortable sharing that from that experience?
Sure. I'll share a not super controversial one. So I was in the Office of Presidential Speechwriting. I was like the most junior member of the administration. Like there's no one more junior to the job that I had. It was an entry level job. I was 20, right? And then 21. And so it was speechwriting research, although I occasionally got to write speeches and op-eds and things. And one of the jobs is when there was a first draft of a speech, it would go to the president, but it would also go to people whose portfolio it affected anywhere in the executive branch. So it would go like to the Secretary of State. It would go to the Council for Foreign Relations. It would go to the Office of Management and Budget. It would go to, cabinet secretaries and assistants to the president all over the West Wing and then all across Washington for comments.
Right. The draft. So the draft goes out to affected parties. They give their notes. Comes
right,
back,
and then they return them back.
Yeah.
And then that's where the trouble is, right? In speech writing, you imagine maybe that everyone has the same take on these speeches. Of course, they don't. Everyone has agendas. It's Washington. These are career politicians. People are fighting for different resources, different points of view, and the speechwriters don't want to get fired for this. And so what they would do is they would take all of the inconsistent comments and give them to like junior researchers like me who were completely dispensable and say, please harmonize these comments. But it's like, who's right in this case? Is it the White House Chief of Staff or the Secretary of State? Is it the UN ambassador or the head of USAID? Like, this is not the kind of job that 20-year-old Democrats should make in that administration. And one day, it was a couple of days after my birthday, a friend who worked there had given me a gag bow tie. It was like hilariously, costumishly grotesque. And on a dare, I wore it into work. And it was that day, for the very first time, that I met the White House Chief of Staff, John Sununu, who didn't ever come into the old Executive Office Building, now the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, across the street from the West Wing. But on this particular day, I'm sitting at my desk and I could hear from 100 yards away John Sununu with a copy of a speech in his hand, walking down the hall, yelling, "Who is Ed Walters and what is his agenda?" Quietly untying the bow tie, stuffing it in my desk. It was an awesome experience, man. It was lucky. I cold called the White House to get the job because I remember the number from a Trivial Pursuit question. Happened to be interviewed by one of the coolest, most nonpartisan, most amazing leaders in the White House. I think she's now the head of the Nike Foundation. Like an amazing leader.
Yeah.
And then I got to work in this office where I was just given a ton of responsibility. And it's just one of those places where you just feel lucky. I like bound up the steps every morning.
That's an amazing story. You kind of drop it as a small footnote, but I think the fact that you cold called the White House, hey, give me a job like that. That takes some chutzpah,
Well, it's one of those examples in life where, 85% of life is showing up. You don't get the job 49 times out of 50 when you cold call, but 1 out of 50 times, like maybe you do. In this case, I was just calling to ask if they had internships.
Yeah.
And the switchboard operator connected me to the person who does the hiring. I think they made a mistake, actually. But I was there to pick up life's rebound.
Let's jump ahead. Let's fast forward to Fastcase because, it sounds like you had this in your head for a while. And I'm curious about how that crystallized. How did it come together that you went out there and took the leap of faith to found the company?
Yeah, well, the founding story you may already know. You can stop me from telling the story, but I was a young associate at Covington and Burling. I was in my second year at the firm, maybe. And I was very involved in our computer working group, and one day, a big client of the firm, I won't say who it is, but let's say it's a large software publisher that specializes in making PC operating systems in 1999. And this, unnamed client of the firm calls and says, we've got a question. We need an answer by tomorrow morning. It involves software. It's too new to be in the books. You won't find it in the digests, things you could actually use for research in 1999. So you have to go do this research online. But don't use Westlaw or LexisNexis.
Okay.
And I said, that's the way our firm does legal research. That's what we're subscribed to. What's the hang up? It can't be money. Like, I think this company's biggest legal problem that year was, what do we do with all this money? They were rapidly becoming the most profitable, largest company in the history of the world. But they said, no, it actually is money. We have like 300 outside law firms who do work for us, and they all charge the cost of those software packages through to us, and our bills for them are becoming astronomical. We don't pay to put the book on your shelf. We're not going to pay to put it on your computer either. So find the answer by tomorrow, find it online. Don't use the incumbent services. And I, optimistic, enthusiastic, computer-friendly young lawyer, said, well, I'll just go use whatever the third biggest service is. But there wasn't a third biggest service. Couldn't find one. So at 1:00 in the morning, I am bodily punching the printer in our office suite. And my next door neighbor comes in also at 1:00 in the morning and says, Ed, what are you doing here? Why are you punching our printer? And I said, this is stupid. Like, can't believe we pay for a taxpayer expense, the law to be prepared right, to have judges and clerks like draft these opinions, legislators write laws, agency regulators draft regulations. We do this at taxpayer expense, and then we give it away to these monopolists who sell it back to us for these highly arbitrage prices. It's crazy. It's not like it's copyrighted stuff. They're not selling us like newspaper articles or movies or something. These are public domain legal materials. And by the way, the software sucks. Like, it's terrible. It's embarrassingly bad. And I've got half a mind to go build the thing that I was looking for all night. In a brand new World Wide Web world, I don't see why you couldn't build a better legal research service. And my next door neighbor at the firm said, that's interesting. Did I ever tell you that I had a PhD in physics before I went to law school? I said, no, you never told me that. He said, yeah, if you're serious about it, let's go take a look at it. Phil Rosenthal, my next door neighbor and co-founder of Fastcase, who, by the way, failed to mention that he had a PhD in superstring cosmology from Caltech before graduating top of his class at Harvard Law School. You can't pull these things out of Phil. He's such a humble guy, but like a genius, like any definition of genius would include Phil. And so he was just this kind of chance encounter at 1:00 in the morning at Covington and Burling that really led to this. And I should say, like, there's no way I start this company without Phil. It was Phil who said, this is a really good idea. It is something we really could do. Let's really go take a look at it. Phil and I, over the next 6 months, built like a prototype, and on nights and weekends, figured out what legal research should be like. And in the process, probably invented like, I don't know, a dozen different legal research innovations that are now things we take for granted in the incumbent services in every research service in the world. Stupid things like resorting search results. Fastcase invented that. The idea that you would rank search results by relevance, Fastcase invented it, first service to do it. The idea that you would put citation analysis in the results and use it to rank, got a patent for that. And like we invented like all of these different ideas, data visualization for the search results. But yeah, we got started in the winter of 1999, November, December of that year. Probably the worst month in American history to start a software company.
Absolutely.
Because right after we got started, the dot-com 1.0 economy exploded, and then suddenly everything that touched the internet was automatically a stupid idea and like unfundable as far as the eye can see. So we started at a terrible time and bootstrapped our way and starved to death. Bill, at some point in 2001, exceeded his first notch in his belt loop. He got so skinny from us not being able to pay ourselves or eat that he had to buy a smaller belt. So it's not as glamorous as today, where there's a very well-developed legal tech market where people have heard of legal tech and are interested in investing in it. If there's an opposite of it, that was the environment that we started Fastcase in.
Absolutely. Things are a little crazy now. Why not raise $300 million at a $5 billion valuation? That's commonplace now.
Hey, look, man, if we could have done it in 2001, I would have done it for sure. But at the time, it was just impossible.
But you remain bootstrapped through that period, right? Until did you ever go out for a raise?
We raised money from friends and family, Phil's family, my family, like my godfather, lawyers who were friends of ours, lawyers at Covington. Eventually, Spencer Trask, a forward-looking venture fund, realized this was probably a pretty good idea. And so they invested a seed round of money, but a very modest amount of money. And it took all in all about 3 years. So 3 years of working to build the idea and build the software and try to raise money. And by the time we raised the money, like most of the money had been spent on the past 3 years. It was so hard that when we raised that round, we basically said, that's it. Like if we had invested the time and effort that we spent trying to raise money in building software, we wouldn't need the money. So we said, that's it. And that was the last time we raised money. We basically just grew behind our revenues for the next 20 years. Our raise was in 2003, and our merger with VLEX was in 2023. So it's 20 years of, basically earning money first and then expanding the size of your business, like reinvesting it back into the company.
Well, fancy that a company actually grows from profits. I mean, I really admire what you've accomplished and the fact that you did it that way, because it just requires perseverance, grit, belief, of course, delivering for your customers, and thereby developing that revenue stream that just continues to grow. I mean, it's building a business, the old-fashioned way, and it's the real way, actually, of doing it right. And
well, thanks. I mean, I think it would be important to say here we didn't have any choice, but we could have gone back to practicing law. We could have quit for sure. Different people would have made different choices, but I think we did recognize, look, there is a good idea here. Somebody is going to do it. Why not us? There is going to be like a big alternative to the incumbents in legal research. And there's There's no reason why someone else has the right for it to be them instead of us.
Absolutely. Why not us?
Why not us?
That's a great takeaway.
By the way, I would also say to entrepreneurs, why not you? Phil and I were not like magic business people or like super entrepreneurs. There was nothing in our education or background that would say it should be us and not somebody else. Um, you don't have to have like a degree on your resume or a particular set of history, work experiences, something on your LinkedIn, somebody that you know, in order to be that entrepreneur. I mean, you can look, man. Phil and I can do it. Really, why not you?
With that, I do want to jump ahead to just talk a little bit about VLEX and Vincent and AI and all that. I mean, you built a solid business with Phil. Um, you had a talent, by the way. I would point out to the audience of um, these kind of partnerships with individual state bar organizations and really building like a brick by brick a national foundation there with lawyers, and then at 2023 entered into this agreement to be acquired by VLEX, and VLEX, coming from Europe, based in Spain, Barcelona, has its own like international legal database. And how did that come together? Because that sounds fantastic, but on the other hand, one might think, well, European company coming and then working with an American company, there might be some friction or difficulty, or like there would have to be some cultural adjustment, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot to say about it. So let's start with this. The state bar associations made Fastcase. Like partnerships made Fastcase. We partnered with state bar associations who would subscribe to the service and then make it available for free to every member of the bar association. And without them, we never would have been able to bootstrap or grow the business over the time we did. But by the time that we merged in 2023, I think virtually every state bar association and probably 4 metro county voluntary bar associations subscribed to Fastcase and made it available to the members. Our mission was to democratize the law and to make legal research smarter. Working in partnership with state bar associations, 1.2 million of the 1.3 million lawyers in the United States had subscription access to legal research. That meant they could represent their clients without fear of getting it wrong. They wouldn't get gouged by the incumbents in this market. It was a very effective way to accomplish our mission. Super proud of our work. So let's just say, in 2014, I started teaching this class at Georgetown called The Law of Robots. And we worked very closely on the frontier of legal research. We had partners like Case Text who were doing work in AI. We had set up an AI sandbox program where we were working with law firms to explore how they could use AI in their business in like 2017, 2018. Let's just say we could see it coming, right? We knew the AI wave was coming. And as a bootstrapped company, we didn't have the engineering wherewithal to do enough with it. Like we weren't going to get there in time. At the same time, we also recognized like the same problems that motivated us to start Fastcase in the United States existed around the world. And we wanted to extend beyond the United States, maybe to Canada and Mexico. And so in this process, we said, look, we should go raise some money for the first time in umpteen years to get the kind of engineering talent to grow beyond the United States, to kind of reinvest in the business. And in that process, VLEX was the flip side of the coin. They had been building across like 100 countries, but nothing in the US. And they had these amazing engineers, including the chief technology officer, Angel Faust, one of the co-founders of VLEX, but Robin Chesterman, Dean Penderly, like these really skilled engineers who had great ideas about what to do with legal AI, but they needed I think the US legal market and legal database to do something with it. And so it was kind of a perfect match. And in this process, when we went out to raise money, they said, don't raise money. We actually just raised money. And we combined the horizontal database of 100 countries with a very deep database in the US. And your skill in building products and communicating around these messages, and our skill in finance and engineering, you really do have like a very complete global company. And that was the hypothesis, right? So the name remained VLEX, but we merged the businesses. Like Phil and I didn't get bought out. We merged VLEX and Fastcase. We kept the name VLEX, but the mission was the same. The people were the same. The Fastcase team, all stayed on. But I'll say this: the hypothesis has proven out like way better than we could have even expected. One hypothesis was that data would be a differentiator. Over time, the different foundation models would become kind of a commodity. It wouldn't matter whether you're using, GPT-4.1 or Claude 4 or, Gemini or something. Like the differentiator would be the data. And that really has worked out the way we were hoping. But what we didn't expect is that data would be such a strong tailwind to create AI products. So Vincent AI is like a platform of 23 different workflows and growing. And it has the law of 17 countries in it. It's multilingual, multimodal. But the products are amazing. Like having the data as a grounding for this avoids all the hallucinations that have been the biggest problems of legal AI. And it fuels the creation of new products, new capabilities, new workflows in ways that we couldn't even expect. It's like so much better than we expected when we merged the companies together. And the teams are working extraordinarily well together. So I have to say this is the best work that I've done in my career. The work of the combined VLEX team on Vincent AI, I'm just super impressed with. And I was an early skeptic. I just said, look, I just don't know that this transformer architecture, large language models are going to be able to do this. And I was wrong. I mean, they're just so impressive and so surprising. The emergent behavior of these large language models in the presence of a global billion document tagged legal database makes all the difference in the world. All right, I'm going to stop preaching. I'll just say, though, the merger of VLEX and Fastcase had a hypothesis about democratizing the law and making the practice of law better in the same way we started Fastcase in 1999. And it has worked so much better than we could have hoped. It's amazing. I'm very, very excited about the work.
Well, to hear you explain it, it sounds like no surprise that those things fit together like a hand in glove. And I'm glad to hear that it's working out so well, because it's really about the people. You, Phil, like you all are, wonderful people to have there at the helm. So I feel good about your prospect.
Well, and I'll just say, when we merged the companies, I had to give up being the CEO. And the hypothesis was that the CEO of VLEX, Luis Faust, was going to do a great job at this kind of combined merged company. And really, I mean, he has. He's done a terrific job. His brother Angel Faust and the VLEX engineering team are terrific. I mean, that was our hope. That was our hypothesis, right? But it really worked out. They've done terrific work. And of course, one of the things I love most about this is to see the real stars inside of the Fastcase team rising as well. So my successor is Nina Jack, who I think you've met. And she was the head of product at Fastcase, but now she is the general manager for all of the United States inside of VLEX, effectively like the CEO of the Fastcase part of the business. And one of my favorite things about this merger is watching the way that she has developed as a professional and the extraordinary work that she has done as a leader, as an innovator, as an entrepreneur. I'm just super proud to see the way our team, and top to bottom, really has risen to the occasion.
It's a fantastic story of success. I do, with the time we have left, though, I want to ask you a couple of questions because, you mentioned you came back from New York. You're out there meeting so many people and so much work to do. How do you keep it together? It's a question about work-life balance and how you achieve it. Is there such a thing?
Oh, well, yes, but I think it's sort of like playing golf in a way. Like you never accomplish it. I'm not a big golfer, but I played a little bit when I was younger. You're always like even the best golfers in the world are always trying to get better at it. There's no time when you've ever like sort of accomplished work-life balance. I am a GTD guy, getting things done. I'm sort of an inbox zero guy. And so I try to be very disciplined about my email, my task list, and my calendar. And for me, that is my lifeline. Like if I lose access to any one of those three things, I'm just lost. But so at any time, I can tell you how many unread emails there are in my inbox, zero. I can tell you how many items there are in my inbox that haven't been dealt with. Right now it's 23. But over the course of this week, I will either resolve them, I'll do them, or I'll delegate them, or I'll put them on the calendar for a date certain to be done at a certain time, or I'll delete them. Delete, delegate, do, I think is the proper methodology. But I really stay pretty focused on staying on top of the work. And the reason for that is I want to be able to spend time with my family. I really make an effort to be at dinner, present with my family for dinner every night. I really endeavor not to work on the weekends, maybe an hour here or there, but for the most part, my son is 17, so I've got one more year before he goes off to college, and I want to maximize that. Like that's really important to me. And my time with my family is really important to me. It is hard. I mean, balancing teaching and work and family time is a challenge for everyone, I think. But staying organized, like obsessively organized, is kind of my way of dealing with it. The other thing I'll say is I'm a big believer in the Eisenhower decision-making matrix.
Wow.
You know this?
Yeah.
It's a 2x2 grid between things that are important and urgent. And the idea is that some things are important and urgent, some things are important and not urgent, some things are urgent and not important, and some things are not urgent and not important. And there are quadrants, and this is Eisenhower's formulation of this. Everyone agrees on quadrant 1, urgent, important, do that first. Everyone agrees on quadrant 4, not urgent, not important, don't do that. The big fight is between quadrants 2 and 3, right? Urgent and not important, important and not urgent, right? Backwards.
Right.
Important and not urgent in quadrant 2, urgent and not important in quadrant 3. And one of the things I'll say in my work at VLEX as chief strategy officer is I've tried to really occupy quadrant 2, things that are important and not urgent. They're hard to get to. I think we get so caught up in firefighting and doing things that are on fire right now. There's a natural pull towards quadrant 3, things that are urgent, maybe not super important. After the merger, without as much day-to-day operational responsibility, I have enjoyed the liberty of occupying quadrant 2, working on things that are important but aren't due this week. That is another way that I maintain that balance. I'm pretty disciplined about where these tasks are in their urgency and importance.
Yeah, and that makes sense, especially as the chief strategy officer, to focus on the important. The last question I have for you is, and you've already anticipated this a bit with what you just talked about balancing work and life and your priorities and values and putting your family first. But at the end of the day, especially after this wonderful career of building this company and taking it to the next level now with working at VLEX, like what makes this worthwhile for you?
Well, I have to say, there's a couple of parts of it. I mean, first is my family life is fulfilling in a way that nothing else is. And there are people who talk about their companies as their babies and things like that. And I don't begrudge them. I've just never felt that way. My family occupies like a space that is completely different than my work. And I take a satisfaction in it that doesn't really compare. One of my favorite experiences from the last couple of years, while I was growing Fastcase and sort of building a business that I'm very proud of, is that I was a soccer coach to my son, and I love that experience. And I have to say, like, if you have the opportunity to be like a youth coach or like a dance instructor or to occupy that space for your kids, it's I can't recommend it highly enough. It requires some discipline in your life, but man, I really, really love that. And then I'll just say, like, I really enjoy the work. I like the work that I'm doing, and I think it's in part because Fastcase was always mission driven, and I think VLEX is mission driven in the same way. Like, democratize the law, make the practice of law smarter. You can look at every decision we make and trace it back to one or usually both of those objectives. And, that was always exciting. It's exciting today. Like, I wake up in the morning super energized about the work that I'm going to do because I think it's really impactful. And sometimes it takes on like a supercharged significance at a time where AI is going to really transform the way we deliver legal services, make a meaningful, large-scale dent in access to justice, make the lives of people and their relationship with the law more sensible, more understandable, more fair, and more just. And to know that the work that I'm doing is going to play like a small part in that. Like, I'm super excited about that. Like, I'm really motivated by that mission, and the work is like really enjoyable. If I go all the way back to when I was a doe-eyed, enthusiastic young law student, like, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the law degree and use software to scale justice, and now I have the opportunity about it. That's a huge motivator for me. And so, being able to live a life that balances these things, this incredibly fulfilling family life, and work that I think really matters to me, is a blessing. Like, I consider myself very lucky, and I'm thrilled to be able to do the work. I'll just add one last thing, which is I have so many friends in kind of the legal tech and legal services world. It's just awesome. I mean, being able to work with you and our kind of community of fellow adventurers in this, in state bar associations and corporate legal departments, in law firms and legal tech companies, that's also really fulfilling. Like, those relationships mean a lot to me, and the friendships that I've made with people who are working on these issues are just so important. I just feel like the luckiest guy in the world.
Well, Ed, I think you are. I think your career it's everyone's dream, but I think that the reason why you made it a reality is because you made it a priority, and you made it it was a reflection of your values, right? And I think because you approached the world that way, and you made the choices based on that, that's why it came back to you, and you're living that. And I just find it so inspiring. I hope people out there do. I'm sure they do. And just want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Tom, it's such a privilege. I'm really grateful to you for inviting me and for, just allowing me to tell some stories like this. It's been a lot of fun.
So for everyone who's listening or watching and they want to reach out to you, keep in touch, how do they do that?
Well, you can get me on LinkedIn, which is linkedin.com/in/Walters. I have accounts on X and Blue Sky, but they're a little less well tended to. If you usually just send like ed@vlex.com or ed.walters@vlex.com, you can get me. Yeah, I'm not hard to find.
Well, Ed, thanks again. It was fun hanging out.
Thank you, Tom. Talk to you soon.
And for all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.